Welcome to Waters World. I'm Jesse Waters. Stop listening to the haters. That's the subject of tonight's Waters Words. Remember all this?
There's not going to be a President Donald Trump. That's not going to happen.
A lot of people have no idea that Trump is headed for a historic defeat.
Even if Donald Trump did win all of the toss-up states, he would still lose.
I just want to say, you're not going to be president, all right?
The so-called political pros lost their credibility last year. So why do we keep listening to them this year? Everything the establishment says about Trump turns out to be wrong. Let's take a trip down memory lane.
In the event Donald wins, I have no doubt in my mind the market tanks.
Mark, buddy, I hate to do this, but let's play it again.
In the event Donald wins, I have no doubt in my mind the market tanks.
How could the first billionaire business mogul president tank the market? The Trump bumps juiced the stock market to historic highs. Speaking of tank,
let me tell you what I think.
So not only was Trump going to destroy the economy, he couldn't even get anything passed through Congress, remember?
This is a test for President Trump's legislative abilities in terms of being able to fashion legislation as he has promised. And he's got big items coming up, tax reform being one. But it looks like he can't deliver.
I don't think they're going to be able to get a consensus together to get tax reform done.
He is a powerless president.
Does a powerless president deliver a $1.5 trillion tax cut to families and businesses? Repeal the Obamacare mandate? And finally begin drilling in Anwar? And one of the most irritating things to listen to is pundits claiming cutting corporate tax rates wasn't going to help workers.
This is just a matter of fact. When corporations get tax cuts like these in this economy, they buy back stock.
They very well may buy back stock, but Comcast, which owns MSNBC, announced as a result of the tax cut, it would give special $1,000 bonuses to more than 100,000 of its employees. I'm sure the staff of Morning Joe could use that money around the holidays. And AT&T also promised $1,000 bonuses. Wells Fargo promised to hike its minimum wage to $15 an hour. And Boeing promised to spend $300 million on employees.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Finally, Trump's ISIS strategy. Crooked Hillary didn't think too much of it.
Donald's been all over the place on ISIS. Sometimes he says he won't tell anyone what he'll do because he wants to keep his plan, quote, secret. And then it turns out the secret is he has no plan.
I remember what part of the plan was.
I'm going to bomb the shit out of them. It's true. I don't care. I don't care.
And people from all stripes didn't think it would work.
It's interesting to hear some people, they run for president, they talk tough. We're going to carpet bomb ISIS. We're going to make the sand in the Middle East glow in the dark. Well, you can't carpet bomb ISIS if you don't know where they are.
And CNN said destroying ISIS in Iraq would take a generation.
This is something that's going to go on for a very long time. This is a generational threat. You just don't say beat it in 30 days because it's frankly insulting to the individuals who've been attempting to put all their strength on the line to defeat it over the last 16 years.
It didn't take a generation. It took a year. ISIS has been driven from the battlefield in Iraq and holds no territory there anymore. You don't believe me? Even the New York Times op-ed page was forced to admit it. Columnist Ross Douthat, writing in a piece titled "A War Trump Won," quote, "If you had told me in late 2016 that almost a year into the Trump era, the caliphate would be all but beaten without something far worse happening in the Middle East, I would have been surprised and gratified. So very provisionally, credit belongs where it's due. To our soldiers and diplomats, yes, but to our president as well." So, when you're around the dinner table this Christmas and your left-wing cousin starts popping off, bring these examples up. If he or she doesn't listen, pour them a little more wine. Why should we believe anything the haters and the pros say about Trump when they've been proven wrong 2 years in a row? The answer is you shouldn't. If your local weatherman keeps telling you it's going to be sunny, but it always rains, that's fake weather. So find a new weatherman on a different channel. The same goes for fake news. It's time to start thinking for yourself and trusting people with proven track records, like me. Joining me now to respond, former White House Communications Director Anthony Scaramucci.
How do you respond to all that?
I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with what I just said.
Well, listen, I think you were spot on. You left out one thing. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
See that?
And we can say that now.
Christmas is back.
That's right.
Merry Christmas.
So you were involved in some of these fake news items.
Sure.
What do you think of these people? Why do they keep being put on air when they keep blowing it?
I just think it's something about the president's style. He's a larger-than-life figure. He believes in the impossible. Most entrepreneurs know how to go from 0 to 1. It's a very hard thing to do. And so that's him. And so 0 to 1 on ISIS, 0 to 1 on tax reform. And listen, at the end of the day, in my cell phone, I probably shouldn't tell everybody this because they steal my cell phone, but in my cell phone, he's listed as Ted Rose, which is shorthand for Teddy Roosevelt. Because at the end of the day, what the Trump legacy is going to be about is empowering working-class families and middle-class families with more wages and more disposable income. Look at the positive byproduct of this tax reform, $1,000 checks getting written by some of the largest corporations in America.
But that wasn't supposed to happen. Remember, the greedy CEOs were going to squirrel it away just for the shareholders.
But you see, and this is why I call him Teddy Roosevelt, because at the robber baron era, sort of 1890 to 1912, when Teddy Roosevelt got in there, he pushed these guys to create better living standards for their workers, better living standards for the people that were employed. Henry Ford said, listen, we're going to build these cars and we're going to give you enough money to pay for the cars that you're building. Trump is that sort of guy. President Trump is that sort of person.
So Teddy Rose, a.k.a. President Trump, in your cell phone, do you guys still talk?
We do. I mean, listen, I'm not going to exaggerate how much I talk to him, but I was coming off set the other day talking about the tax reform, and we had a nice conversation. We talked before Thanksgiving. I was in Israel. I had a couple of rabbis with me on the bus going back up to the Tel Aviv airport. I turned to the rabbi and said, let's call the president. He's in Mar-a-Lago. It's the day before Thanksgiving. It took about 5 minutes for him to come on the phone, and then he turned to the rabbis. I had him on speaker. He says, you tell Bibi, Prime Minister Netanyahu, I'm coming to Israel. I'm going to beat him as Prime Minister. And they all laughed.
There you go.
I thought it was true.
So if you were to advise the president now, he's going into the second year. They've got tax reform done. They've got the Obamacare mandate repealed, drilling, and things are moving on the border. What would you like to see happen? Because the midterms are going to be tough. You know how that swings historically.
Well, midterms have been tough for all these presidents. You go back to Reagan, even President Obama had a difficult time in 2010. And so the first midterm is always a tough one, Jesse, but I think this president is going to surprise even on that because the filtration of the tax reform ending up in the economy, more disposable income for families, people are waking up that he has the right policies. My liberal friends don't like perhaps his style, but when I press them super hard, and if you're at the dinner table on Christmas, just press your liberal cousins.
Yep.
What policy has he promulgated that you really don't like? And it's very hard to come up with one. So for me, I think if he just stays on course, he gets out there and he does the beautiful job that he does with his messaging, he's going to surprise people in November of 2018.
So what are you up to these days? You're like a big star. I've seen you on the late night shows. What's going on?
I'm unemployed. I don't even have a business card.
You're on welfare. Is that right?
I can't even get a $1,000 check from one of these big companies. No, listen.
You're doing something on TV, probably, right?
Well, we'll see. I've had a number of very interesting conversations in that space, and so my guess is that hopefully something like that will materialize by the first quarter of next year, which would be exciting for me. I'm also waiting for my deal to close. If for some reason it doesn't get CFIUS approval, which is too complicated to bore your viewers with, I have a plan. I have a plan B. I tell most of the entrepreneurs out there, and they get this, entrepreneurs very rarely use plan B, Jesse, because they always have to use plan Z. Okay, that's the problem with entrepreneurship. So we'll figure out what happens. But my guess is that 2018 is going to be a spectacular year.
Okay, and you're not running for any public office because one of your former colleagues, Steve Bannon, I guess there was a report saying he was going to run for president.
Well,
would you vote for him?
Well, listen, when he runs for president, I'm going to enlist you as my vice president. You and I are going to run against him. I think that would be a pretty colorful primary debate.
Scaramucci Waters, I could see it on the bumper sticker. It's a lot of letters. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a lot of letters, but people are ready for ethnics like us.
Okay, am I ethnic?
No, you've got that anglicized last name, but you probably have some ethnicity back there somewhere.
Somewhere, I don't know. One of your other people who people use in the same sentence, Ryan Lizzo. Lizza.
Yeah.
So you blew up on him over the phone, and he hosed you. It was supposed to be off the record. Everyone was upset about that. Now, something happened to Ryan. I think he got canned for some sexual misconduct. Care to comment on that?
Well, I mean, listen, I mean, literally my first reaction to it is, the guy's got a family and he's got to make a living. So that was a little bit of like, whoa, because there's family members that are innocent involved. My second reaction is it's good news for America, so he won't be doing the sort of nonsense that he did to me. He's obviously a very bad actor, and so karma has a way of turning back on people. We can debate what I did. I did something wrong. I obviously was talking to him. Our families go back 50 years on Long Island, and I was talking to him in an inappropriate way. So I tell young kids, I've been speaking at all these different universities, when you do something wrong, admit it, own up to it. Obviously, I apologize to the president. He accepted my apology. We're still good friends. I understand why I lost my job, and the good news is that it set up all these amazing opportunities. And so when one door's closing, Jesse, another door's opening, and that's always good news. As it relates to Ryan Lizza, though, you know, I would tell people, be good to other people. You know the difference between right and wrong. Howie Kurtz said that what he did to me was unconscionable, and he'd never seen that done in 40 years of being in Washington to a governmental official. So, you know,
did you find that commonplace when you were there for that period of time, where people in the press corps would really have axe to grind, or they'd set you up for failure, and just so much animosity out there? What was your take on that?
Not all, but I think one of the mistakes was made early on is the declaration of war on the media is not going to. You're not going to win that from the presidency or win that from anywhere.
Kill him with kindness.
It's okay to have an adversarial relationship. It's okay to call out bad actors in the media. But declaration of a full-scale war, I think, is not going to help anybody. And so one of the things that I tried to do, and probably the only thing I'll be remembered for, is turning the cameras back on in the press room.
And that's great, because Sarah Huckabee Sanders is doing an excellent job.
Listen, she's doing an amazing job. When the president gave me the job and Sean resigned or retired, he turned to me and said, "You okay with Sarah being the press secretary?" And because we could, you know, you're okay. I said, I'm totally okay with that. Let's not even make her interim. She should be the press secretary. She's doing a great job. She carries the message well. She's extremely professional. But above all of that, there's a sense of kindness about Sarah, and I think the American people see that and appreciate it.
That really comes through. There are reports that the president is continuing to think about shaking up the staff. There was a whirlwind staff shakeup over the summer where it got a little chaotic.
There was a staff shakeup over the summer?
I don't know. You might have heard of it.
I had a pretty uneventful summer.
So, you know, 2018. Do you think there's opportunities for the president to get new blood in there, to move people around?
Well, look, I mean, this is his genius once again. People don't like this about him. Certainly the political establishment doesn't like it because he doesn't think like a political operative. He thinks like a corporate CEO or an entrepreneurial CEO. And so hiring and firing people in the corporate setting is not as big of a deal, apparently, as is in government.
In politics, it's huge.
Unfortunately, when I got fired and when General Kelly fired me, I was on the receiving end of it. Now, you know, I have been on the other side of it in a corporate setting where someone may be somebody that I like, but it's not fitting into the system the way I wanted to, and I've had to deliver the information that the person's fired. And so I have no problem with what the president's doing. It's important for him to get the people around him that he likes and he trusts.
Do you like the people he has around him right now? Do you think there's any room for improvement?
Yeah, well, listen, I think there's always room for improvement. If Jack Welch was sitting here on the set with you, he'd tell you that he eliminated 10% of the bottom performers at GE every year and tried to, you know, upgrade the staff every year. I'm not saying they have to do that inside the White House, but I think by and large the president's been served well by his staff, the new staff. I would say the post-July staff, myself included for that matter. I think he's done a very good job. But I do think there's room for improvement, as there always is. And my guess is he'll have new people that'll be exciting and fresh, and will help him out.
How worried about the Russia investigation are you on a scale of 1 to 10? Do you see it as a huge threat to the presidency or not?
I only see it as a threat that what happens with these special prosecutors is they take a very laissez-faire, broad attitude. So as an example, Ken Starr was appointed to go after the Whitewater situation 25 years ago. He stayed there for 5 or 6 years, and he ended up hitting the president on the Monica Lewinsky situation. So for me, I think these things get a little bit reckless. I don't like it on either side. I don't want to talk as a partisan here. If Secretary Clinton was in office, they'd be hitting her on Uranium One, the erasure of her emails. There's always a scandal, Jesse, in Washington. It's like Scandals Incorporated. It's done to distract. It's done to attack and disfigure people. It's like the politics of personality destruction. The American people are actually tired of all that. They really just want results. And in the last 11 or 12 months, the president has delivered results. Okay, the economy is moving. They said in the you left this out of your tapes, but
I thought
said,
it was perfect.
Your tapes were great, but you left out the fact that the Obama administration said we'd never grow at 3% again.
I know. It looks like this year it's going to be 3.
Here we are. We've had 3+ GDP prints this year.
Right.
And a lot of that is a result of the president deregulating, setting the right pro-business policies around the world, and obviously the tax cut, which will be very stimulating in 2018.
So the Democrats are saying the tax cut is a handout to corporations, it's a handout to the wealthy, it's the same thing they push every single time. How effective do you think that is going to be going into the midterms? Do you think the economy is going to be strong enough where people are going to tune that out?
Well, I think that they're going to tune that out, but there's one thing about the American zeitgeist that we'd have to be careful, and now I'm speaking as a partisan Republican, is typically the American people like balance in their government. And so you have the House, the Senate, and the presidency controlled by the Republicans. And so even though things will probably be very good, in my mind, economically, going into the November election, the American people sort of like that balance, and that's running up against the Republicans. And so they're going to have to work 3 times harder, because if you look at what happened to Barack Obama in 2010 or Ronald Reagan in 1982 or George W. Bush in 2006, typically the party in power that holds the Oval Office gets routed.
Right.
And so that's built into the cake. But I do think that this is a dynamic, different sort of a president. He thinks very differently than these other people. And so if it's impossible to win and retake the House and Senate in the midterm election, you can't count out President Trump, because he'll probably do that.
Well, I know if President Obama was around and companies for Christmas were giving out $1,000 bonus checks, he would get all of the credit. And right now, the press has moved on from that story. They want to ignore it, and they want to delink it from the tax reform package. So I don't know if the president's going to get that much credit. I mean, he's got to claim the credit himself and do it over Twitter and push past the fake news.
Yeah, well, I think what we've learned, though, and the reason why he won, I mean, I don't know, you probably remember this better than me, there's probably 90% of the press was decidedly negative on him, or 74% according to the Pew Research, maybe 90% of CNN, and yet he still won the American presidency. And so the people know. I mean, they have a good nose for this stuff. Lincoln once said that the people have a very good nose. They can smell a rotting cadaver in their basement. And so the rotting cadaver right now is this super biased press.
Right.
But it's also elements of the political establishment that the American people are totally tired of. They don't like the self-dealing. They don't like the lobbyist scheme. You mentioned Steve Bannon. Steve often talked about the swamp being a business plan. I do agree with him on that. I mean, there's no question that circuitry that the president's trying to disrupt and break will be way better for the American people. So we'll have to see how this unfolds. But they're going to continue to hit him because he represents change and disruption. And my God, if I'm on the other side of him, what if he's right?
They can't afford it. If the president is successful and the president's right, it destroys the two-party system. It destroys the culture in the swamp, because an outsider businessman with no experience to come in and actually accomplish things makes all of these politicians look feckless, and they can't afford that.
And it opens the door for other super talented people. It wouldn't just be right-leaning billionaires. It could be left-leaning billionaires.
It could be more Cuban.
The swamp is worried about both sides.
Yeah.
They're worried about a Jeff Bezos as much as they are a Donald Trump.
All right, well, they should be worried about Scaramucci Waters.
Well, it depends. I'll have to see who's running against us.
I
get to say Merry Christmas again?
You get to say it. Merry Christmas.
Jess, great to be here.
Thanks
big
very
honor
much,
to be on the
Anthony.
show. Thank you.
Appreciate
Happy New Year to you, too.
We have more legislative victories than any other president, not including this, but this is the capper, because this is, again, the biggest tax cut, biggest reform of all time.
That was President Trump Friday, patting himself on the back for finishing the year strong. But Obama officials stung that their legacy is in tatters. All came out of nowhere this week, trying to rehab their former boss and attacking the sitting president. Here's Joe Biden with a whopper.
I've never met any president that has more character, more integrity, and more backbone than this guy does. It was an honor serving with him. And 8 years, not a hint, a scandal.
Wow. Joining me now, Fox News contributor, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. So, I mean, just off the top of my head, the VA scandal, people died waiting in line to get service and care. And you have the IRS, you have Benghazi, Fast and Furious. The list goes on and on.
Well, it's good to be with you. Merry Christmas, Jesse. And you're absolutely right. When I hear what former Vice President Joe Biden said, first of all, in 2013, President Obama was awarded with the PolitiFact Lie of the Year for his statement about people being able to keep their doctor and keep their insurance when it came to Obamacare. So that kind of takes away this whole thing about integrity. But you just brought up a series of incredible events, and you did not add in the new Black Panther voter intimidation case, which somehow went away. But when you think about Fast and Furious, where we saw U.S. Border Patrol agent Brian Terry lose his life. You think about all the veterans that lost their lives in the VA scandal, and you think about the 4 Americans and the others who were wounded during Benghazi. These were very serious incidents, but yet no one was ever held accountable. No one ever really took any responsibility, and that continues to be a blight on the face of the American people and, of course, the Obama administration.
Because actually,
it can't
Eric
just
Holder
be easily dismissed.
Was held in contempt for not being forthcoming with the Congress with regards to Fast and Furious. And now there's a new scandal that's brewing. Politico reported that because the Obama administration was so desperate to cut a deal with the Iranians that they let a bunch of Hezbollah arms dealers and cocaine traffickers off the hook. And, I mean, these people tried to kill Americans. They're pushing drugs into the country. That's going to be investigated now, we're hearing.
Well, it has to be investigated, and those of us that have been following national security issues, especially down in the Southern Command in South America, know that Iran has been supporting Hezbollah, which is their terrorist proxy army, for quite some time to get a foothold into South America. But for those Americans that have forgotten, before there was al-Qaeda in 1983, the largest incident of a terrorist attack resulting in American deaths, 243 Marines, sailors, and soldiers lost their lives in the Beirut bombing. And that was Hezbollah. And the fact that we have a president that was putting pressure on our Drug Enforcement Agency to stop an investigation of Hezbollah drug and gun smuggling so that they could get through the Iranian nuclear agreement, which we know the Iranians have not been adhering to whatsoever, that is very disconcerting.
Not only disconcerting, it's corrupt because the rest of the press won't cover it. And that's why someone like Biden can get away with saying that he's been scandal-free, because no one's even going to challenge him. The fact that you're sitting across from the former vice president and he comes out with a blatant lie like that, he can get away with it on the network shows, but he can't get away with it here. I want to talk to you about Susan Rice, former national security official for President Obama. Really, she should not be the one criticizing anybody. After President Trump unveiled his national security strategy, she said this, quote, "Relinquishing the nation's moral authority in these difficult times will only embolden rivals and weaken ourselves. It will make a mockery of the very idea of America first." So, Lieutenant Colonel, you know, when 4 Americans were left to die and not rescued on the anniversary of 9/11 in Benghazi, that was not putting America first. She has no legs to stand on here.
No, absolutely, and that is almost a self-fulfilling prophecy of her own tenure as the National Security Advisor. Think about it. This is the exact same Susan Rice that said that the United States of America needs to live with a nuclear North Korea. In other words, she continues to advocate for the strategic patience policy and strategy of Barack Obama. And when you think about the lack of regard and respect that we have, and I served in the military for 22 years, that was horribly diminished. You think about what President Trump has been able to do in less than a year, and that is to reduce the entire territorial integrity of the Islamic State, something that Barack Obama came out and talked about in his strategy, but he never accomplished it, and he kept telling us that something was coming and he was going to take an action. So I think that we are seeing, you know, as you mentioned earlier, is a complete reversal of the previous 8 years, and this is something that is not sitting well, to include an economy that is, you know, clicking along at 3.2% gross domestic product when the President Obama Obama never even hit 2%.
That's true. And America First is the exact opposite of leading from behind, which Susan Rice was the architect of. Let's get into some other Obama officials. Here's the last one. So, this is unbelievable. You have a photo, and this is a tweet from Dan Pfeiffer, and this was what he said. Here it is. I hope this is the photo they use on the front page of the Times on the day Trump is indicted. Oh, that's very nice. And then Ben Rhodes, former national security guy for Obama, said, and alongside the obits for Ryan, McConnell, and Pence. Really, the obits. And Steve Scalise responded, as you know, who was shot by a crazed left-wing maniac. You may want to reconsider your rhetoric. So, you know, if you're out there and you're an Obama guy and you're talking about the obituaries for Trump people, come on, right? I mean, this is not in the season, Ben.
Well, one of the things you have to come to understand is when you have senior leaders and officials that are, you know, espousing this type of rhetoric, then there's always going to be someone out there that takes action. And unfortunately, we saw Steve Scalise be the victim of said rhetoric. But we have to move beyond this, and let's have the conversation about policy. Let's have the conversation about issues. This cannot continue to be about demonizing people, showing the commercials of a Paul Ryan pushing grandmother off the cliff, or talking about how Republicans and their tax bill and tax plan are going to end up killing people, or it's Armageddon and things of this nature. That is really the rhetoric of people that don't have any solutions to offer. And I hate to see that happening here in the United States of America, because we have tried, you know, the previous 8 years, and that did not yield us the results, being in our economy, being in our military, our foreign policy, whatever. So it's time for us to look at a different way to move forward.
Well, hopefully we can all come together in the Christmas season. Looks like you've come together in the Christmas season with that vest. That
well, I only get to wear it once a year.
That's a
and so
festive piece
it's all
of
for
attire.
you, Jesse.
Well, thank you. I'm honored. I'm honored. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
All right. Up next, Dave Chappelle playing the race card.
Live from America's News headquarters, I'm Molly Line. The death toll in the Philippines from a tropical storm now stands at 120, and 160 others are still missing. The storm blew across the southern part of the Philippines, setting off landslides and causing flooding. It struck as people were gathering for Christmas preparations, a peak travel time. Forecasters say the storm will not blow away from the island until tomorrow. Funeral services were held today for a California firefighter who lost his life fighting the Thomas Fire, now the largest fire in state history. Corey Iverson was remembered as a devoted family man who did not hesitate to do his job. He leaves behind his pregnant wife and 2-year-old daughter. Iverson died of smoke inhalation and burns 9 days ago. Governor Jerry Brown was among the mourners at Rock Church in San Diego. I'm Molly Line. Now back to Waters World. For your headlines, go to foxnews.com.
The left taking any opportunity to attack President Trump, including his use of Merry Christmas. Here's CNN's Don Lemon.
Let's remember, President Trump isn't the only president who says Merry Christmas. President Obama and the First Lady Michelle Obama said it many, many times. This is a dog whistle to the base because no one has ever stopped saying Merry Christmas.
Joining me now to discuss is RNC spokeswoman Kayleigh McEnany and contributor at The Federalist, Britt McHenry. So, Kayleigh, he's basically saying when the president says Merry Christmas and emphasizes that now he's saying that again, it's signaling to his white supporters what exactly?
It's a ridiculous assertion to call that a dog whistle. It's the term Merry Christmas. And the reason President Trump says it so boldly is because the last president, President Obama, was the president who removed crucifixes before he spoke at Georgetown University, attacked the Little Sisters of the Poor, only to be rebuked by the Supreme Court. Christians were under attack in this country. Their rights were not respected. They could not live freely and openly without government intrusion. So that's what he means when he says it boldly, that we can celebrate now.
And as a veteran of the war on Christmas, because you know I was on the front lines for many years for the last 10 or 12 years in the field. This was happening in the country. It was department stores, it was schools, it was a cultural phenomenon. And now it looks like you can say Merry Christmas again, and a lot of people aren't super PC about it. And that's what this is all about. It's political correctness, right, Britt?
Yeah, I'm just glad that Don Lemon is counting how many times former President Obama said Merry Christmas instead of obsessing over President Donald Trump's tweets. The fact of the matter is there's reason to say that. On their official holiday card, the Obamas said just that, Happy Holidays.
Right.
The Trumps have said Merry Christmas. You went there. I was recently at the White House, had the blessed opportunity to be there. It was beautiful. Melania Trump did an amazing job. But of course, what does the Washington Post say? They slam her, call her decorations ominous in the hallway when you walk in. It was beautiful, but the media will never give that credit.
That's true. And you're right. In the 8 years under President Obama, all of his Christmas cards said Happy Holidays. And now they say Merry Christmas. So I want to get into another kind of racial bomb that has been thrown by comedian Dave Chappelle. Take a listen to this.
I've never had a problem with white people ever in my life. But full disclosure, the poor whites are my least favorites. Man, Donald Trump's gonna go to Washington and he's gonna fight for us. I'm standing there thinking to my mind, you dumb mother. You are poor. He's fighting for me.
Now, he's just a comedian, Kaylee. But, I mean, there is kind of an undertone there that these dumb, poor, white Trump voters are just getting hoodwinked. Do you take this seriously or not?
No, I do take this very seriously. You know, we live in a society where liberals like to groupify people. They're the ones that are race conscious, putting people in groups based on their socioeconomic status. This was completely over the line. Imagine if this was reversed and a white comedian said this about another racial or ethnic group.
You could never say it.
He would be scrutinized as he should. You could never say it. This is ridiculous. And, you know, let's move on to a society where we can judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, like Martin Luther King hoped for.
That's true. I just don't want to get too uptight about it because he is a comedian and it was kind of funny. But he's crossing into the political zone, Britt. And you know, when you're a comedian, you cross over into politics, there's going to be a little blowback.
Yeah, he should call Chelsea Handler and Jimmy Kimmel, and they can all have a group therapy session about where their ratings are going by attacking President Trump and the voters. I just think that he should actually thank those poor whites that he allegedly doesn't like. They're his least favorite people, because electing Trump and the economy we now have, it's the lowest unemployment rate for black Americans in 17 years. So really, maybe he should be grateful for those people he condemns so much.
Yeah, he's just pushing the left-wing narrative that the tax cut's going to help out companies. But as we said at the top of the show, you know, those tax cuts and those corporations, you're getting $1,000 bonus checks for the holidays.
Yep.
Those go right into workers' pockets. All right, so again, the left not having a lot of success on the policy front, continuing to play the race card. This is what some Huffington Post guy said when President Trump did the whole, you know, gala congratulating himself about the tax cut, and black Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina was standing by. Quote, "What a shocker. There's one black person there, and sure enough, they have him standing right next to the mic like a manipulated prop. Way to go, Senator Tim Scott." And the senator responded and basically buried him. Here he goes. "Probably because I helped write the bill for the past year. Have multiple provisions included. Got multiple senators on board over the last week and have worked on tax reform my entire time in Congress. But if you'd rather just see my skin color, please feel free." So this is a white liberal, Kaylee, trying to play the race card on a black guy. Didn't work out too well.
Didn't work out. I think he actually apologized for that, as he should have.
He did.
But this is a good case study for the liberal worldview. They look at everything through the purview of race and gender. When they see Tim Scott, that is what they saw. They saw his race. They didn't see his achievement. They didn't see the fact that he has one of the greatest conservative records on the Hill, that he worked tirelessly for this. They looked at him for his race. It is sad. We should reject this type of thinking. And I can promise you, if this was a conservative that had done this, he probably would have lost his job.
Yeah, it's total hypocrisy. And you make a good point. I don't know what the Democratic Party believes when it comes to border security. I don't know what they believe when it comes to health care or taxes or defeating ISIS. I do know that the Democratic Party thinks Trump's racist. That's about it, Britt.
Well, that's the card they always throw out. And I find it funny that Ryder, in his apology, said he should have expressed his view differently. How much different are you going to express that? You're trying to discredit a man who put hours and excessive time into significant tax reform. If you're going to focus on race, why don't you highlight that he was the first black senator elected in the South since Reconstruction? Why don't you highlight he's an evangelical Christian and all the great things he's done to the community, as Kayleigh mentioned? But no, it's always for insults, and look how that's working for the Democrats right now.
Right. Well, when you play the race card, it's usually the last card you have left to play. Ladies, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
That's not a dog
Merry
whistle.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas. All right, up next, a UFO sighting.
I've actually been abducted to the moon.
What do you think the ET's agenda was?
When I was strapped down on there, one of the little grays came and straddled me. They were taking tissue samples down in that region.
Excuse me?
Okay, this is where it gets really weird. You've got to believe me. A mantis comes in and it gets right in my face and just looks at me as he's writing down things on a file.
I've seen aliens before.
Have you?
When I watch MSNBC.
Right? I know.
That was Water's World last year at a UFO convention in Arizona. And now UFOs are back in the news. The New York Times reported the Pentagon spent $22 million researching the existence of unidentified flying objects. And my next guests say they've even had this unforgettable encounter with one. They're former Navy pilot commander David Fravor and former Navy pilot Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate. Okay, so Jim, I want to begin with you. I don't think you've discussed this before. You saw something while you were out in the air, and tell us about it.
Sure. Hi, Jesse. And actually, it's Commander Slate. I retired as a commander. I was a lieutenant commander at the time. We were out flying off of the Nimitz, just doing a standard training hop. We took a vector and headed east towards, heading towards Mexico or the San Diego area. As we approached and we're looking around, we actually noticed down below, just above the surface of the water, was really what's best described as a tic-tac.
So when you were looking at this tic-tac, what were you feeling? Was it something that you knew wasn't anything you'd ever seen before? Were you curious? What went through your mind?
My initial thought was, well, maybe it was a submarine, and it had launched a missile or something.
Yeah, I don't know about that because we're looking at it right now, and it does not look like a missile from a sub. David, you were there as well. What was your encounter like? Were you confused? Were you scared? What went through your head?
No, I think when I first saw it, and Jim and I saw it at about the same time, was what is it first? And then the curiosity of, well, let's go see if we can get closer to it and see what it really is. And that's when it started to, I won't say interact with us, but it started to mirror our flight path and start to climb towards us as we descended towards it.
Did you feel nervous when that behaved that way?
No. No, I was, you're kind of, I don't know, maybe adrenaline kicked in and it's something you've never seen. It's got flight characteristics of stuff you've never seen and you want to see what it is, so I just tried to get closer.
Neither of you guys ever felt threatened by it, correct?
No.
No, I mean, no.
Okay. And when you went back to your superiors, did they think you were crazy? Did they file a report? Because everybody knows men in the military, usually pretty evidence-based, as you said. Jim, and you guys come out there with this video and unidentified flying object. Were you a little nervous about telling people? They might think you're crazy.
I'll say, I don't think I was worried about telling anyone. It was more of, we knew we were going to catch a lot of grief on the ship for seeing something like this. But no one, I don't think anyone played it off because they had been tracking them for 2 weeks. And this was the first time that manned airplanes had been airborne when they showed up.
All right, so last question, and we only have a few more seconds. Do you believe in aliens from outer space, yes or no?
It's certainly possible.
It's possible. Okay, Dave, what about you?
Yeah, I believe that, I don't think we're alone.
Okay. All right, well, listen, you heard it here first, and the evidence is right there. It is an unidentified flying object. I don't know if it was an alien or an ET driving it, but we're definitely curious about what's going on, and we just hope President Trump declassifies all the UFO files. You know, he did JFK, now we're waiting for Area 51. Gentlemen, Merry Christmas.
Hey, Merry Christmas Jesse. To you too, Jesse.
Up next, this 3-year-old girl taking on Santa Claus.
Better not show, better not cry. This guy's standards way too high.
Each year, parents around the world tell their children that if they behave, Santa will bring them presents on Christmas. But one 3-year-old skeptic is catching on and thinks there may be something more to old Saint Nick.
So I'm supposed to meet Santa at the mall. You mean Santa, the dude Mom mentions? To Mom looking at me. Yeah, peeps, we know the deal. This ain't my first rodeo. He knows when I'm sleeping. He knows when I'm awake. First off, this guy has no life. And, that's really creepy. Better not show, better not cry. This guy's standards way too high.
Joining me now, Mila Stauffer and her mom, Katie. So, Mila, do you believe in Santa Claus?
Yeah.
You do. But you think there needs to be some improvements with the way Santa delivers the toys?
Yeah.
What would you like to see Santa do to make things better?
I don't know.
You don't know?
More presents.
Presents. What are you going to be asking for Christmas this year?
I don't know.
You don't know? You didn't make a list or anything like that? What was that?
LOL dolls.
LOL dolls.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to play another video of you when you actually had some advice for how Santa could be more efficient. Let's hear that.
Drones are the future, people. I'll have those babies flying around the world. Wrapping presents like Christmas will be efficient and productive. Forget leaving Santa's cookies. These Duracell batteries for the drones. Anna is naughty and nice with a simple and nice shirts.
So, Mila, have you been naughty or nice this year?
Uh-huh.
You have?
Naughty or nice.
Katie, do you agree?
Yeah.
She's been pretty good, but
yeah.
It's been an interesting year.
It has been. So you're a big internet star, Mila. How does it feel to be so famous?
I don't know.
You don't know? Well, I have to say, you are probably one of the cutest little girls I've ever seen.
I eat pizza.
You eat pizza? Okay, well, listen, pizza's delicious. When you're my age, you can't eat too much of it because you'll start looking like Santa. But at your age, you can eat as much pizza as you want. So, listen, Merry Christmas, Mila. And I'm glad you believe in Santa Claus. And Katie, thank you for raising such a cute daughter.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having us.
All right. Merry Christmas, you guys.
You too. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right. Up next, last call. Time now for last call. Tuesday's NBA game between the Bucks and the Cavs was wild, but most of the action came during a timeout. All right, so these are members of the Milwaukee Bucks Grand Dancers. It's a group of men and women over the age of 55. You know, letting loose on the court to Cardi B's Bodak Yellow. The dancers perform at all the Bucks home games. And I know when I'm that age, 55, I'm going to have moves like that too. That's all for us tonight. Be sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Justice with Judge Jeanine is up next. And remember, I'm Waters, and this is my world.